She was standing barefoot on cold marble when they decided her future would be paper-thin. The room wasn't loud. That was the first thing people always got wrong about power. It didn't announce itself. It settled. Heavy. Certain. The Caldwells' dining room overlooked the Atlantic. Glass walls stretching from floor to ceiling like the house was daring the ocean to try something. Crystal chandeliers hummed softly overhead. Linen napkins folded with military precision. Every chair already occupied by someone who looked like they had never waited for anything in their life. Nia Brooks felt every inch of the floor through her feet because Catherine Caldwell had insisted shoes be left at the door. Something about preserving the imported stone. It was a small thing. That was the point. Marcus sat beside her, shoulders tight, jaw locked. He kept staring at the condensation sliding down his water glass like it might offer guidance. He didn't look at his mother. He didn't look at his father. He didn't look at Nia. Catherine smiled with her mouth, not her eyes. "We believe in clarity," she said, folding her hands. "Especially before a union like this. Union, not marriage, not love." Across the table, Harold Caldwell leaned back in his chair, cufflinks catching the light. The man owned half a dozen logistics companies up and down the eastern seaboard. Ports, warehouses, trucks you never noticed until shelves were full. He had the posture of someone who had never been told no. Nia nodded once. She had learned early that reacting too much only fed people like this. A flicker of memory slipped in without warning. Marcus laughing on her fire escape in Brooklyn, legs dangling over 4 stories, sharing greasy takeout at midnight. "We'll do it our way," he'd said then. "None of this matters." The flash was gone as quickly as it came. Catherine slid a thick folder across the table. Leather-bound. Embossed. Heavy enough to make a point when it landed. "A prenuptial agreement," she said. "Standard. Necessary. Non-negotiable." The folder stopped inches from Nia's hand. Marcus inhaled sharply. "Mom, we talked about this." "We did," Catherine said calmly. "And you agreed." Nia turned to him. Waited. Marcus didn't meet her eyes. "It's just a formality," he said. "It doesn't change anything." That lie landed softer than the truth would have, which somehow made it worse. Harold leaned forward. "This protects the family," he said. "And it protects you." Nia almost smiled at that. "Protects me from what?" she asked. Catherine tilted her head. "From expectations you can't fulfill." There it was. The quiet cruelty. Delivered like advice. Catherine continued, voice smooth. "Marcus is an only child. The Caldwell Trust is valued just north of $400 million. Real estate, shipping contracts, private equity stakes. We can't have confusion later." Confusion. Like love was a clerical error. Nia reached for the folder, but didn't open it yet. Her fingers rested on the leather. The room watched. Another memory slipped in. Her mother at the kitchen table years ago, stacks of paperwork spread out, teaching her how to read contracts line by line. "Never sign when someone's rushing you," she'd said. "That's when they're hiding something." Catherine mistook Nia's pause for hesitation. "We've been generous," she added. "You keep everything you brought into the relationship. No claims on future assets. And there's an allowance clause. $50,000 a year. For lifestyle adjustments." Allowance. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Mom." "Quiet," Harold said, not raising his voice. Marcus went still. Nia finally opened the folder. Pages of dense legal language. Clauses nested inside clauses. Her name printed cleanly at the top, already boxed in by definitions that reduced her life to entries and exclusions. "You sign," Catherine said, "and the wedding proceeds as planned. You don't, and Marcus walks away from the trust." Completely. Nia looked at Marcus again. He swallowed. "I didn't know she'd say it like that." "But you knew," Nia said softly. Silence stretched. The ocean rolled behind the glass, indifferent. Another flicker. Marcus on one knee in the rain outside a jazz bar in Harlem, hands shaking, voice breaking when he asked. She had said yes because it felt real. Because he felt real. Catherine watched the exchange like a chess player watching a piece get trapped. We're not villains, she said. This is simply how our world works. Nia closed the folder. When do you want it signed? She asked. Catherine blinked, surprised by the lack of resistance. Tomorrow night. At the engagement reception. Our attorney will be there. Witnesses. Transparency matters. Of course it did. Public compliance was the final humiliation. Nia nodded once. That works. Marcus's head snapped toward her. Nia. She squeezed his hand under the table, hard enough to stop him from talking. I'll sign, she said again. Catherine's relief was immediate. Harold smiled for the first time. Good, Catherine said. I knew you were sensible. Nia stood. The marble felt colder now, or maybe she was just more aware of it. As they walked out, past framed photos of yachts and ribbon cuttings, and men who had never carried their own bags, Marcus finally spoke. You didn't have to agree, he whispered. We could have figured something out. Nia stopped near the door. You let them decide without me, she said quietly. That already told me everything. He flinched. Outside, the night air tasted like salt and money. The driveway curved toward a line of black cars waiting with engines humming. Nia looked back once at the house, at the glass walls, at the people inside already congratulating themselves. They thought the folder had ended the story. They thought tomorrow night would be a formality. They didn't realize they'd just asked the wrong woman to put her name on paper. The engagement reception wasn't a party. It was a demonstration. They hosted it in a private event hall overlooking the Manhattan skyline, the kind of place where the elevator opened straight into the room, so no one had to share space with the building's ordinary tenants. A wall of windows framed the city like a trophy. Below, traffic crawled. Up here, time moved differently. Music floated from a string quartet positioned near a glass sculpture that looked like it had been shipped from somewhere that didn't allow fingerprints. Nia walked in beside Marcus and felt the room register her in layers. First, the dress. Black. Clean lines. Nothing screaming for attention. That was mistake number one in their eyes. Second, no jewelry. No loud brand logos. No visible insecurity. That was mistake number two. Third, her posture. Straight. Calm. Like she belonged. That part didn't fit their story, and it irritated them. Catherine Caldwell waited near the center of the room, surrounded by people who laughed too loudly at whatever she said. When she saw Nia, she stepped forward with the measured warmth of someone greeting an employee. Nia, she said, kissing the air beside her cheek. You look lovely. It was the kind of compliment that sounded harmless until you noticed it lacked detail. Lovely meant acceptable. It meant she had not embarrassed them yet. Harold appeared behind Catherine, glass of whiskey in hand, scanning the room as if he owned every person in it, as well as the view. Marcus, he said, clapping his son's shoulder. Smile. Tonight is about family. Marcus forced one. Nia watched the way his smile didn't reach his eyes and felt something inside her settle into place. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. A decision. A flash of memory flickered at the edge of her mind. Marcus sitting on her couch, telling her he hated this world, telling her he wanted out, promising she was his way out. The memory didn't comfort her. It just made the present uglier. Across the room, guests clustered in polished circles. Black executives in tailored suits. Old money donors. Media people with eyes like cameras. Politicians who loved appearing where power gathered. The kind of crowd that didn't ask what you did for a living. They asked who vouched for you. They looked at Marcus like he was a prize. They looked at Nia like she was a question. She caught fragments as she passed. That's her. I thought she'd be different. He met her where? Brooklyn. Apparently. Catherine guided them toward the center as if she were positioning them for a photo. We're doing the signing before the toasts, Catherine said quietly, leaning toward Nia. It's best to get it out of the way. Out of the way. Like wiping something off your shoe. Nia nodded. Of course. Marcus's fingers tightened around hers. We don't have to do this in front of everyone, he whispered. I'll talk to them. Nia looked at him. Now. He went silent. That was the pattern. He always found his courage after the moment passed. The room shifted as 8 o'clock approached. Lights dimmed slightly. The quartet softened. People drifted toward the center, drawn by the same instinct that made crowds gather when they smelled blood. A long table had been placed near the windows. Documents stacked neatly. Pens lined up like weapons. A microphone stood at the edge. Nia's stomach didn't turn. Her pulse didn't spike. She had been watched before. She had learned how to let the eyes slide off her like rain. Catherine stepped to the microphone and tapped it with a manicured nail. The room hushed. "My friends," she said, voice bright, polished, practiced. "Thank you for joining us to celebrate Marcus and Nia. Love is a beautiful thing, but love without wisdom is dangerous." Some people chuckled softly, the kind of chuckle that meant they understood the subtext. Catherine continued, "In our family, we believe in honesty, in transparency, in building foundations that cannot be shaken." She gestured to the table. "So tonight, before we raise our glasses, we will sign the agreement that ensures this marriage is based on affection, not financial confusion." Confusion. There it was again. Nia's eyes moved across the faces in the crowd. There were smiles. Some sympathetic. Most amused. A few hungry. This was entertainment for them. A ritual. The poor girl proving she knew her place. Marcus walked to the table first, shoulders stiff. He looked like he was walking to a sentence. Catherine nodded to a man standing beside the documents. A lawyer with a face that had never expressed mercy. "Mr. Lawson," Catherine said, "please proceed." The attorney cleared his throat. "Under New York law," he began, projecting like a performer, "full disclosure must be made. The Caldwell Trust assets are listed here. Various properties, holdings, interests. Total estimated valuation of $412 million. A polite ripple of approval moved through the crowd. Not all. Just confirmation that the Caldwells were still what they claimed. The attorney turned a page, then lifted a thin sheet between his fingers like it was a joke. "And for Miss Brooks," he said, glancing up, mouth twitching. "A schedule of assets provided this afternoon." A few people laughed before he even read it. Nia didn't react. The attorney continued. "As noted, Miss Brooks is a—" "Read it," Nia said calmly. The sound wasn't loud, but it cut through the room. It made the attorney pause. Catherine's smile tightened. The attorney looked at Nia, then at Catherine, then back down. He began again, voice slightly less amused. "Asset schedule for Nia." He stopped. He blinked once, then again, as if he had misread. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. A soft wave of discomfort rolled through the room. People leaned forward. Not because they cared about Nia, but because silence in a wealthy room always meant something had gone wrong. Harold's voice carried, sharp as broken glass. "What is it?" The attorney swallowed. "I need to confirm," he said slowly. "This document lists." Catherine stepped closer, whispering harshly, "Just read it." The attorney's fingers tightened around the page. His voice came out different now. Not playful, not mocking. Careful. "Asset 1," he said. 70% controlling stake in Brooks Meridian Holdings. Valuation, $13.8 billion. The room didn't gasp right away. Shock is slow when it doesn't fit the script people brought with them. A woman near the front let out a small sound like she'd been punched. A glass slipped from someone's fingers and shattered softly against the floor. Then the air changed. The attorney continued, words stumbling as if he couldn't believe he was saying them out loud. "Asset 2," he read. "Brooks Family Trust. Liquid holdings $2.1 billion. Asset 3, real estate portfolio including properties in Atlanta, Chicago, and a controlling mortgage note on." He looked up, eyes landing on Harold Caldwell. This building. The room went still in a way that felt physical, like the temperature dropped. Catherine's face drained so fast, it looked like someone had pulled the power out of her. Marcus stared at Nia, as if he had never seen her before. Harold's whiskey glass lowered a fraction. His grip tightened. Nia stepped forward and took the microphone with a calm that made the crowd even more unsettled. "You wanted clarity," she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't triumphant. It was controlled. You wanted transparency, she continued, looking at Catherine. So here it is. She glanced at Marcus. He looked like he couldn't breathe. I will sign your prenup, Nia said, letting the words settle. Not to protect your 400 million. She looked back at the crowd. I'm signing to protect my 13.8 billion from people who think humiliation is a language. For a moment, no one moved. The city lights behind them glittered like a backdrop to a public execution. Then the whispers started, frantic and desperate. Brooks Meridian? Is she that Brooks? Oh my God. Catherine's lips parted, but her voice didn't come. Harold looked like he was trying to force his brain to reject reality. Marcus took a step toward Nia, voice cracking. Nia, why didn't you tell me? Nia didn't answer him yet. She picked up the pen, and as she lowered it to the paper, she felt the whole room lean forward, starving for the moment she would either submit or strike. The pen touched the page. She signed, and in that exact second, the crowd's loyalty shifted like a flock turning in one motion, eyes no longer on the Caldwells, but on the woman they had just tried to shame. Nia capped the pen, set it down, and looked at Catherine with quiet certainty. You've been so worried about protecting your family, she said. I understand. She turned slightly, letting her gaze land on Harold. I just hope you understand I protect mine too. Then she stepped away from the table and walked toward the exit, leaving a room full of people who had come to watch a humiliation and instead witnessed a reversal so clean it felt surgical. Behind her, she heard Marcus call her name again. But she didn't stop. Not yet. Because the reveal wasn't the ending. It was the opening of something worse. The room didn't explode after she left. That was the mistake everyone made when they imagined moments like this. There was no shouting. No chaos. Power didn't panic. It recalculated. Nia felt it before she heard it. The silence behind her was too clean, too controlled, like a boardroom after bad news. Outside, the night air hit her face, sharp and grounding. The city hummed below, oblivious. She stepped into the waiting car without looking back. The door closed with a quiet, final sound. Inside the tinted interior, she exhaled for the first time all night. Her phone buzzed immediately. Not Marcus. Not an apology. A number she didn't recognize. You moved faster than expected. She stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered. Who is this? The reply came before the dots could disappear. Someone who knows the Caldwells are already bleeding. The driver pulled into traffic. Red lights streaked past like warnings. Another flash, unwanted. Marcus on her couch again, head in his hands, talking about how his father hated risk, how the companies were over-leveraged but stable, how Catherine always knew before the market shifted. Nia had listened without asking questions. Not because she couldn't ask, because she didn't need to. Her phone buzzed again. They're scrambling. Harold left the room the second you walked out. Didn't even look at his wife. Nia typed slowly. How do you know that? Because I was in the room. She stared at the city beyond the glass, then typed. Name. A pause this time. Evan Price. She felt it then. Not fear. Recognition. Evan Price had been mentioned once before, years ago, during a late-night conversation Marcus barely remembered having. A junior analyst. Too curious. Asked questions about cash flow that didn't align with the public reports. Fired quietly. Disappeared. She typed again. What do you want? Another pause. Longer. To make sure the right person falls. The car stopped at a light. Nia watched a couple crossing the street below, laughing, unaware of the machinery grinding behind the scenes above them. She didn't reply. Back inside the venue, the mood had shifted in ways only the powerful noticed. Catherine stood frozen near the table, hands trembling just enough to give her away. Conversations around her resumed, but they bent. People angled their bodies differently now. Laughter moved elsewhere. The gravitational center of the room had shifted, and she wasn't it anymore. Harold had already disappeared down a side corridor, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and sharp. Pull the credit lines, he hissed. All of them. Now. On the other end, Someone hesitated. I don't care if it spooks the lenders, Harold snapped. Do it. He ended the call and leaned against the wall, sweat beading at his hairline. This wasn't embarrassment. This was math catching up. Inside the men's room, Marcus splashed water on his face, staring at his reflection like it had betrayed him. She lied to me. The thought repeated, useless and loud. Another memory pushed in. Nia asleep beside him, phone lighting up once in the night. He'd turned over, half awake, not curious enough to ask. He'd trusted the version of her that needed him. That trust tasted bitter now. When he stepped back into the hall, his phone vibrated violently. His father. Get out. Harold barked the second Marcus answered. Go home. Don't talk to anyone. Don't say a word. What's happening? Marcus demanded. Why didn't you tell me? Because you don't know how to keep your mouth shut, Harold snapped. And because none of this concerns her. Her. Marcus flinched. It concerns me, he said. She's my fiancée. Harold laughed, sharp and humorless. No, son. She's your liability. The line went dead. Marcus stood there, chest heaving, suddenly aware that the floor under him wasn't as solid as he'd believed his entire life. Across town, Nia stepped into her apartment, kicked off her shoes, and poured a glass of water. She didn't sit. She paced once, then stopped. Her phone buzzed again. They're calling emergency meetings. Lawyers. Bankers. Everyone. Good, she typed. Another message followed immediately. You don't know the half of it. She leaned against the counter, eyes closing briefly. Tell me. The reply took longer this time. Harold's been moving money. Not losing it. Hiding it. Her eyes opened. Explain. Evan's response came in fragments. Careful. The public story is bad investments. Commercial real estate. Shipping slowdowns. That's real, but it's not the damage. The real money moved offshore. Shell accounts. Layered transfers. And guess whose name is on the paperwork? Nia didn't type. She didn't need to. Marcus. The confirmation came anyway. He didn't sign knowingly. It was mixed in with routine documents. Trust restructures. Tax strategies. Harold needed a clean exit if everything collapsed. A scapegoat. Nia's grip tightened on the glass. So when this blows up, Evan continued, it's not Harold who goes down first. It's Marcus. The room felt smaller. Another flash. Marcus at the table earlier, silent, choosing safety over dignity. She'd judged him for that. Maybe she still would. But this was different. This was predatory. What happens next? She typed. If the debt triggers audits, regulators will follow the money. They'll find the shell accounts. They'll find his signature. 20 years, minimum. Her phone buzzed again. You bought the building's mortgage. That gives you leverage. Control. If you push, it all collapses. Nia stared at the city outside her window. Lights. Lives. Futures moving without her consent. If I don't push, Harold walks. Catherine walks. Marcus takes the fall. Silence stretched. A moral pause. The kind that wasn't about right or wrong, but about who you were willing to become. Another flashback, sharper now. Marcus standing between her and his parents earlier, or rather not standing. His eyes on his water glass while they humiliated her. While they reduced her to nothing. Her phone buzzed one last time. You hold the trigger. Just say when. Nia set the phone down. She didn't feel powerful. She felt heavy. She picked up her coat. Send me everything you have, she typed. Every document. Every transfer. Every name. A pause. You're going back there? Yes. Her reply came instantly. Good. Because Harold never locks the study when he's panicking. Nia grabbed her keys and headed for the door. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware that a reckoning had shifted direction. The prenup hadn't ended the story. It had exposed the real one. And by the time the sun came up, the Caldwells were going to learn what happened when you tried to use paper to trap someone who knew how to read it. The Gates recognized her before the guards did. That was the first thing that unsettled them. The Caldwell estate sat north of the city, tucked behind hedges trimmed too perfectly to feel natural. Old money architecture. Long drive. Circular entrance. The kind of place that assumed it would never be questioned. Nia's car rolled through as if it belonged there, headlights cutting across stone that had never known uncertainty. It was just past 4 in the morning. Inside, the house was awake in the way powerful houses always were when something went wrong. Lights on in rooms that shouldn't be used at that hour. Footsteps overhead. Phones buzzing in distant halls. The illusion of control hadn't shattered yet, but the cracks were audible. Nia stepped out of the car and didn't wait for permission. She walked in like someone who already owned the consequences. Marcus was in the library. He was sitting on the floor, back against the shelves, Tuck's jacket discarded, tie loosened like he'd been choking himself slowly all night. A half-empty bottle sat beside him. He looked up when he heard footsteps and laughed once, dry and broken. "Come to finish it?" he asked. "Measure the place before you take it?" She didn't answer. She knelt in front of him instead and placed a folder on the floor between them. It landed with the same weight as the prenup had hours earlier. "Read," she said. He squinted, fingers clumsy as he opened it. His face changed as the pages turned. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something colder. "This can't be real," he whispered. "Dad wouldn't." "He did," Nia said. "And he used you to do it." Marcus shook his head slowly. "I signed what they put in front of me. I didn't even read half of it. He said it was routine. That's why he picked you," she said. "Not because you're stupid. Because you trust." The word trust landed like a verdict. Marcus dropped the papers. His hands began to shake. "So what happens now?" he asked. "You foreclose. The audits start. I go to prison." Nia didn't flinch. "I didn't come here to destroy you," she said. "I came to decide whether you deserve to be destroyed." That made him look up. The silence between them stretched, heavy with everything they hadn't said earlier. With every moment, he'd chosen safety over spine. With every time he'd told himself this world wasn't his fault while benefiting from it anyway. "Where's your father?" she asked. Marcus laughed again, hollow. "Probably in his study. He always goes there when he thinks." They moved quietly down the hall. The study door was open. Harold Caldwell stood inside, robe draped loosely over his shoulders, safe door open behind him. He was holding a black ledger in one hand, a phone in the other. He looked up when he saw them and didn't bother pretending. "I wondered how long it would take," he said calmly. "I always underestimated you. That was my mistake." His eyes flicked to Marcus. "And you," he continued. "I always overestimated." Marcus stepped forward. "You framed me." Harold sighed. "I protected the family." "You sacrificed me." Marcus shot back. Harold shrugged. "That's leadership." Nia stepped past Marcus, her presence shifting the room. Harold's gaze moved to her, sharp now, calculating. "You don't understand how this works," he said. "You think you won because a room gasped. You think money makes you untouchable." She didn't respond. She simply reached into her coat and placed her phone on the desk. Screen up. Open. Audio waveform. Harold's eyes narrowed. "What's that?" he asked. "Your voice," Nia said. "From 15 minutes ago. Talking to your offshore counsel. Explaining exactly how you moved the money. And why you needed your son's name on it." Harold froze. Marcus turned slowly. "You recorded him?" "No," Nia said. "He recorded himself." She tapped the phone. Harold's own voice filled the room, cold and precise, laying out his contingency plan. His exit. His son's fall. The silence afterward was absolute. Harold looked at Marcus then, really looked, for the first time all night. "You wouldn't survive prison," he said quietly. "I knew that. That's why I assumed you'd never fight back." Marcus's hands clenched. Nia spoke then, voice level. "You forced a prenup to keep me out of your books," she said. "You needed me ignorant. That's where you miscalculated." Sirens cut through the air outside, distant but unmistakable. Harold turned toward the window. Blue lights reflected faintly against the glass. "You called them," he said. "I called regulators," Nia replied. "And federal auditors. I called them as the new holder of your debt. I told them I suspected fraud." Harold laughed once, bitter. "You think that saves him?" She stepped closer. "No," she said. This does. She slid another document across the desk. Harold's eyes dropped to it and widened. A conditional settlement. Cooperation clauses. Immunity pathways. Marcus stared. What is this? A choice, Nia said. He testifies. Fully. He gives them everything. You go down alone. Harold's face twisted. You'd betray your own father? Marcus didn't hesitate. You taught me how, he said. The sirens grew louder. Harold sank into his chair, years draining from him in seconds. This isn't revenge, he muttered. Nia looked at him with something close to pity. No, she said. This is consequence. Minutes later, the house filled with movement. Agents. Voices. Orders. The machinery of accountability finally arriving. As Harold was led away, he looked back once, eyes locking on Nia. You could have walked away rich, he said. You chose war. She met his gaze without blinking. You started it when you tried to buy my silence, she replied. When the door closed behind them, the house felt empty in a way money couldn't fix. Marcus stood in the study, breathing hard, reality crashing in. You saved me, he said. Nia shook her head slowly. No, she said. I stopped him from destroying you. She turned toward the door. That doesn't erase what you did to me. He swallowed. I know. Outside, dawn began to bleed into the sky. The punishment had been set in motion. What remained was the aftermath. The trial didn't feel dramatic while it was happening. There were no outbursts, no fainting, no grand speeches. That was reserved for movies. Real power collapses quietly, buried under procedure and paperwork until it's too late to fight back. By the time the case reached federal court, the Caldwell's name had already begun to decay. News moved first in whispers. Finance blogs, shipping forums, regulatory bulletins no one outside the industry ever read until suddenly they mattered. Creditors froze accounts before headlines caught up. Board members resigned without explanation. Longtime partners stopped returning calls. Silence did more damage than scandal ever could. Nia attended every hearing. She didn't sit in the back. She sat where Harold could see her without turning his head. Not out of cruelty, out of certainty. She wanted him to understand exactly who had ended his reign. Harold Caldwell looked smaller behind the defense table. His suits hung differently now. Less authority in the shoulders. Less arrogance in the spine. Catherine didn't attend the first week. When she finally did, she sat stiffly in the second row, jaw clenched, eyes refusing to meet anyone's gaze. The prosecutors didn't rush. They let Harold talk. That was the real punishment. He tried to charm the room, tried to reframe bad bets as market volatility, tried to paint himself as a victim of shifting global conditions. The jury listened politely while the prosecution waited. Then they introduced the ledger, then the recordings, then the offshore transfers. Each piece landed with methodical precision, stripping away layers of narrative until only intent remained. When Marcus took the stand, the room changed. He didn't grandstand. He didn't cry. He spoke plainly. About documents he'd signed without reading. About trust he'd never questioned. About realizing too late that loyalty had been weaponized against him. He didn't look at his father when he testified. That silence hurt more than accusation. The verdict came on a gray Tuesday afternoon. Guilty on all counts. Harold didn't react at first. He stared straight ahead, eyes unfocused, like he was waiting for someone to interrupt and explain that there'd been a misunderstanding. No one did. Catherine's composure finally cracked then. Not tears. Anger. Pure, unfiltered rage. She turned toward Nia, lips moving silently, shaping words that never made it past her teeth. Nia didn't respond. She didn't need to. Sentencing followed weeks later. Numbers were read. Years assigned. Assets seized. Properties auctioned. The machine did what it was built to do. By the time Harold was led away, the Caldwell empire existed only on paper, reduced to case files and creditor lists. 3 months later, the estate felt like a shell. The driveway echoed now. The halls amplified every footstep. Rooms that once felt imposing felt hollow, stripped of meaning along with the art and furniture that had propped up their myth. Nia walked through the space slowly, hands in her coat pockets. Marcus followed a few steps behind. He looked different, thinner, quieter. The softness that once cushioned him from consequence was gone, replaced by something sharper, harder, real. "They're offering to sell," he said, breaking the silence. "Developers, foreign investors. Everyone wants the land." "I know," Nia replied. He hesitated. "Why aren't you?" She stopped near the window, overlooking the grounds. "Because selling would let someone else pretend this meant something," she said. "I don't want the symbol recycled." He nodded slowly. "I took a job," he said after a moment. "Legal aid. Housing cases. Evictions." She turned, surprised despite herself. "That's honest work," she said. "It's humbling," he replied. "People don't care who my father was. They care whether I can help them keep their homes." Silence settled again. "I owe you my freedom," Marcus said quietly. "You owe me accountability," Nia replied. "And you're paying it." He swallowed. "Is there any version of this where?" She shook her head before he could finish. "This isn't about forgiveness," she said. "It's about clarity. I can forgive you and still walk away." Marcus nodded. He didn't argue. That was new. They stood there a moment longer, two people standing in the wreckage of something that had never been built on solid ground. As Marcus turned to leave, he paused. "They underestimated you," he said. Nia watched the empty rooms. "They underestimated themselves," she replied. Outside, contractors waited. Architects, planners, people who saw possibility instead of pedigree. Nia stepped into the sunlight and handed over a set of keys. "Start Monday," she said. "What are we building?" one of them asked. She looked back at the house one last time. "Something that lets people in," she said. Behind her, the past closed its doors quietly. Ahead, the future waited. 6 months later, the house didn't sound like power anymore. It sounded like music. Cello strings drifted through what used to be the main hall, soft and imperfect, echoing off walls that had once absorbed only silence and command. Paint-splattered floors where marble had been polished daily. Sunlight poured through the same glass that once reflected chandeliers and status, now falling across easels, canvases, and half-finished sculptures. Nia stood near the back doors, sleeves rolled up, palms streaked with blue and red. The air smelled like turpentine and fresh wood. Real work, real effort. A little girl ran past her carrying a canvas nearly as big as she was, laughing when she almost dropped it. A group of teenagers argued loudly near the stairs about whether charcoal or graphite told the truth better. Somewhere upstairs, a voice called out for more brushes. The Caldwell estate had been unrecognizable for weeks now. And that was the point. A bronze plaque had been mounted near the entrance. Simple, unpretentious. Brooks Creative Institute. For those who were told they didn't belong. Nia hadn't attended the unveiling ceremony. She didn't want applause. She wanted permanence. Her phone buzzed softly in her pocket. She didn't need to look to know who it was. "Marcus." She stepped outside onto the terrace before answering. "Yes," she said. "I heard the place opened today," he replied. His voice sounded different now. Less guarded. Less entitled. More careful. "I just wanted to say it looks right." She looked out over the grounds where hedges had been cut back, fences removed, gates left open. "It feels right," she said. A pause. "I'm in Chicago," Marcus said. "Working full-time. Housing cases. I won one yesterday. Single mother. 2 kids. Kept their apartment." "That matters," Nia said. "I know," he replied. "That's why I wanted to tell you." Another pause. He hesitated, then continued. "I found something when I was packing," he said. "One of your sketchbooks. From before. I almost threw it out." She closed her eyes briefly. She remembered that book. The one filled with charcoal studies of hands and shadows and faces half seen. "I didn't," he added quickly. "I couldn't. It felt wrong." "You can keep it," she said. "Just remember what it represents." "I do," he said softly. "Every day." The line stayed open, neither of them rushing to end it. "Marcus," she said finally. This is where it stops. I know, he replied. I wasn't asking for anything else. She believed him. After she hung up, she stayed outside a moment longer, letting the quiet settle. Inside, someone struck a wrong note on a piano and laughed. Another voice corrected them gently. The sound of learning filled the space where intimidation once lived. Later that afternoon, a black sedan pulled up near the gate. No entourage, no urgency. A woman stepped out holding a notebook and a recorder, eyes scanning the property with visible disbelief. Ms. Brooks, she said when Nia approached. I'm with the Tribune. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Nia nodded. You have 15 minutes. They walked slowly through the grounds. This property alone was valued at nearly $50 million, the reporter said. Most people would have sold it immediately, turned it into something profitable. Nia watched a group of kids painting a mural over what used to be a family crest carved into stone. Profit isn't always measured in money, she said. But this, the reporter gestured around them. This is personal. Nia stopped walking. My ex-future mother-in-law once told me art wasn't a real profession, she said calmly. She said assets were the only things that mattered. The reporter nodded, already sensing the quote. So I decided to prove her wrong, Nia continued. She used this house to keep people out. I'm using it to let people in. The reporter smiled. Some would call that revenge. Nia shook her head slowly. Revenge keeps you tied to the people who hurt you, she said. This is freedom. They finished the interview quietly. As the reporter left, Nia walked back inside, picking up a brush and standing in front of a blank canvas. For the first time in months, the weight in her chest felt lighter. Not gone, just manageable. She painted without thinking. Broad strokes. Messy. Honest. That night, when the building emptied and the lights dimmed, Nia stood alone in the center of the hall. She thought about the prenup, about the room full of people who had waited to see her submit, about the moment the pen touched paper and everything shifted. They had wanted to define her value with a document. Instead, they had given her a stage. Her phone buzzed once more. A notification from the channel. New comments were still flooding in. She scrolled briefly. She did exactly what I would have done. Marcus changed, but too late. This is why you never humiliate someone quietly watching. She chose herself. Period. Nia smiled faintly and locked the screen. Before leaving, she glanced one last time at the empty wall where the Caldwell family portrait had once hung. Nothing replaced it. Some things didn't need symbols anymore. As she turned off the lights and closed the door behind her, one thought lingered, steady and unshakable. They had tried to reduce her to ink and paper. She had rewritten the meaning of the room. And now the question wasn't whether she had won. It was whether you would have done the same. Team Future or Team Second Chance.